Hi, Alex here with another image review session, and I'm pleased to say that I've actually got lots of images to show at the moment, so much so I've split the images that I've processed this week into 3 batches, and I'll show you these over the coming weeks or so. You don't want to look through too many images at any one time, so we'll dig into batch 1. I've finally got some time at home, so hopefully I should get a lot of images processed over the next few months and have lots of these lined up to come out. And these pictures are a mix from the last few trips I've done, which are my trips to Papua New Guinea, to the Philippines, to Raja Ampat and Missoul, and then to Lembeh. Batch 1 is all Lembeh. Batch 2 on here, which I'm not going to show in this video, is all pictures from PNG and Raja Ampat. And batch 3 is back to Lembeh again. But yeah, there's going to be lots more to come in this, but let's dive into batch 1 for now. And these are some of the first pictures I shot during the Lembeh trip. I've just processed a few of them out, so we've got 20 or so images to look at here. And if I click on them, you should, on the right hand side of the screen, see the shooting information and everything like that. So this one here is shot with the Sony, or all these pictures with the Sony A1, and this is shot with a 90mm lens, the blue ring octopus here. And you can see the camera settings and everything there. So right, let's get going and have a look at them a bit bigger. So this is just a standard portrait of a blue ring octopus. Always when you're working with blue rings, you want as much shape out of the octopus as possible. So this is quite a common shape that they make when they're moving across the seabed. And you also want good separation from the surroundings so that shape can come through. And you want to time your shot to when they show their blue rings, because contrary to the name, blue ring octopus don't show the blue rings all the time. And we photographers, we wait for those blue rings to appear before pressing the shutter. So you kind of get the impression that they're always showing their blue rings, because who wants to photograph a blue ring octopus without the blue rings on display? But actually, this is just about sort of more carefully timing the shot. And I've shot this one at f10. Blue ring octopuses are quite small, and I was shooting this with a close-up diopter. And it's not a cropped image, so that's why at f10 it's a relatively narrow depth of field, and I've got that nice blurred background behind it. If you don't get as close as this, you need to make sure that you're shooting a lot more open than this in the picture. Right, next up, a picture taken of a striated or striped triple fin, a common little reef fish in Indonesia area. And this one here just sitting on a brain coral. And I've shot this one with cross strobes lighting, so with the strobes pulled out wider than normal to create the shadows inside the coral. And that sort of emphasizes the texture of the brain coral that it was sitting on, which kind of makes for quite an interesting, cool shot. But apart from that, nothing overly exciting there. This picture here is another blue ring. This is a very unusual blue ring, and I've got some more pictures to process of this. That we encountered it on a night dive, actually, and another photographer with another guide was in the water photographing this, and they very graciously passed it over to me. I sort of hung around and waited for them. Actually, I went over them initially thinking it was our dive guide and one of my group, but it turned out to be someone from another boat. And I waited for they to take some shots of it, and I was able to take it over. And this blue ring was swimming around in mid-water quite happily for quite a long period of time during this dive. Annoyingly for me, I was shooting with the Sony 50mm, and it's not the fastest focusing lens, and I did struggle to get very many shots in focus of this guy with the 50mm, because it's a slow focusing lens. Whereas I know with my 90mm, for this shot, if I'd had it, it would have just been so easy to shoot lots of pictures of it in mid-water rather than lots of out of focus pictures of it in mid-water. On a night dive, it was swimming around in mid-water. I've not seen one swim up in mid-water in the daytime. This is a picture of a group of small, sort of medium-sized catfish on a dive, and I just like the shape that they're making here. That they often with the catfish, you see them with doing this sort of shape and this sort of behavior, this foraging behavior, but when you go close to take pictures, they end up all just swimming away from you. So I quite like to shoot them from a little bit further away and to capture this natural way that the school almost tumbles over itself as another group of catfish dive to the seabed to feed, and they kind of move across the seabed almost like a tumbling bush or something, some tumbleweed rolling across the seabed as another front of catfish dive down into the seabed to shoot them. This picture here is taken with a special effect filter or a cheap and nasty effect filter, depending on your point of view on these things. It was about £20 on Amazon. If you go onto Amazon and search photographic effect filters, you'll find loads of these. This one was one called a vortex filter that gave this effect straight out of the camera. I certainly wouldn't want all my pictures to look like this, but it is quite fun to have a few pictures looking like this, which is where these sort of special effect filters come in. And it's just a fun filter. I was using it outside the housing, so I was able to screw it on during the dive. This picture here is from the same dive, and it's a picture taken of a crab-eyed goby with these two eyes. And this was quite fun to shoot because my autofocus was on eye detection when I initially started photographing this goby. And if you photograph crab-eyed gobies, you know that they pose like this, but for never quite long enough for you to take a photo before they move and then pose again and move and pose again, always challenging you. And my eye detection autofocus kept going straight to the eye spots of this guy and not onto his eyes. So in the end, I had to turn that off and just use my normal autofocus to be able to sort of get it all in focus. And that one shot an aperture on f5.6 to blur that background around the subject. So I'm not as close as I was with the octopus shot, but I want that nice diffuse background so the subject matter stands out. Another shot with the special effect filter. I just processed a few of these out to show off the effect, so that's why there's quite a few of them in the mix. I didn't use it very much at all during the trip. It's fun, but I know something like this can often derail a trip as you get all excited about everyone going, oh wow, isn't that exciting on the trip, and then you get home and you're like, oh, I wish I'd photographed all those subjects without the stupid effect filter. But I've processed a few out early on just because I thought they were interesting to people. And this is a pair of Coleman shrimps on a fire urchin, and the next shot is a pair without the special effect filter, a different pair on the urchins. We were very lucky that we had fire urchins in shallow water at the beginning of this trip at Air Prang, for those that know Lembeh. And I was very keen that we went as a group as much as we could early on because I just didn't trust them to stay in the shallow water. And that proved to be correct. And actually, after the group had all been there a couple of times and people were keen to go back, we discovered that they'd moved on into deeper water again and we didn't see them again. But while they were up in the shallows, it was a great chance to shoot them and get lots of shots because there was lots of fire urchins, probably about 30 or 40 of them. And at least 10 of them had shrimps on. So there were lots of different shrimps for everyone to shoot as a group. So they were a really nice subject. A mimic octopus next, just cruising over the seabed. I've always enjoyed photographing mimic octopus from above. When they really show their colours off, they really stand out from the sand, and when they don't, they kind of blend in with the sand. And I like both type of photos. And I just think that this upper angle, particularly when they're on a nice, smooth, relatively featureless sand like this, it shows off their shape really nicely. So I've always enjoyed photographing mimic octopus from above. And it works quite well, actually, because everyone else sort of crowds around them on the seabed, and you can actually just hover over the top of them and get a nice photo of them while other photographers are shooting them. And probably from the same dive, actually, at Rojos. This is up in the shallows on the dive, and it's quite common on those muck sites to have common seahorses up in the shallows. And this is a female. But there was actually another, and it's very common that the common seahorse, the females can be yellow, but actually the male of this pair was also bright yellow like this. But this one I was off on my own, and I found this one on my own, so I was able to spend some time with her and just get a nice, relaxed portrait of her moving over the sand, shot with a relatively open aperture again. 6.3 just to blur that background, but it's more the very low camera angle that's blurring that background more than the aperture. And I've got the camera right down onto the seabed, so I'm shooting really across the seabed at her. Right, a return trip to the Coleman shrimps, probably the next day actually, wanting to go back there, see if we can see the date on these. So this one is on the 1st of May, and that one is on the 30th of April. So yeah, the next afternoon we went back, and this time I went back with the EMWL, keen to get some different images. I've shot Coleman shrimps before with the EMWL, and I really like the effect it gives. And we went a little bit earlier this day to try and get it a little bit sunnier, just to help with the shutter speeds. But it actually clouded over during the dive, and it wasn't the best visibility, so it was quite dark on the dive. So yeah, this is shot at a 13th of a second, and the other one is also a 13th of a second. Just trying to get that blue into the background, which gives so much depth to the pictures, but you do get a little bit of ghosting and movement because Coleman shrimps and the urchins themselves, the spines of the urchins are never still, so you can't go too slow on the shutter speed. I did some shots both as horizontals, and then I rejigged the EMWL to do some vertical images to have sort of the variety in the portfolio, and I've just processed one out of each. These are obviously the same pair of shrimps, and I processed those out. And then this was another shot with the EMWL of a different pair of shrimps, but just from slightly further away, and I quite like this one because it's got that nice sort of circular symmetry from the urchin as the background. So just because the MWL can go closer, it's always important as a photographer to remind yourself that the better shot might not be always right up close. Okay, now we've got a Gorgonian decorator crab, which this one I really like. It's on a Melithea sea fan, and it's got a lovely piece of Melithea on its nose, which it's attached to itself, which is really cool. And they have such fantastic colours, these elegant or splendid, I think they're called splendid decorator crabs, with their red and yellow coloration. They really match these Melithea fans, and they come out at night, and it's something I always mean to look for more in Rajarampat, and always forget to look for, is these guys on night dives, because they're very attractive and they're on such beautiful backgrounds that they make for easy pickings and nice photography. I was testing some close-up lenses during the trip, and a lot of these pictures are taken with those close-up lenses, but there's some forthcoming, or there are prototype lenses from Nauticam, and I can't really say more than that at the moment because they may make production, they may not. It's not unusual that things get tested and then a better idea is thought up, or a way to improve them is thought up. But these were excellent, and this is taken with one of the higher magnification close-up lenses. You can see it's done a really nice job on these, just the rhinophores of this this nudibranch. I can never pronounce the Doris, whatever it is, so I'm not going to try. And then this is an ocellated saw blade shrimp, or Tazuma shrimp, on a sponge, and I just really like this composition with the shrimp sitting between the two sections of sponge here. It looks very attractive. I was able to keep the shrimp relatively parallel to the lens, which helped me keep it all in focus while blurring that background away. And this was shot on a 10th of a second, so using the stabilizer in my camera, flash freezing the subject in the 10th of a second to burn that blue in, which I felt would look really nice with the red color of the shrimps. I know almost every underwater photographer would have just shot this on a black background, had a very impactful image of the shrimp on against black, but I was keen to get that blue in to create that more naturalistic style of shot that I really like. And you can see that even though I'm on a 10th of a second, the detail in the picture stayed really sharp and looking really nice. Okay, this is a fun shot. I just took this picture. I saw a Costiella, what are they called? Shaun the Sheep little slug on this this piece of algae. And it was just a really good opportunity to take a picture to show how small they are, because every time I see a picture of an individual one, it's almost impossible to believe how tiny they are. So I took this picture just to show that off. So it's not a great picture, but it's a really good one for showing how small they are, and it's obviously a picture I'd normally show with a nice portrait of the slug as well. We had lots of these juvenile pinnate batfish on the different dive sites around. We had them on, I think, 4 or 5 different dive sites during our stay in Lembeh, and had all sorts of different sizes to shoot. And in fact, I didn't see it, but at the end they found a really baby one, which I didn't get to see, but which was very cute. And they're beautiful fish because they obviously have a black coloration with this amazing bright color around the outside, and they're thought to mimic a poisonous flatworm. Whether that's true or not, I'm not sure, because they do get a lot bigger than the flatworm. But irrespective, they look amazing, and they look almost like they're glowing on the outside. This one here is shot with quite an open aperture, f5.6, to blur the background and make the fish stand out. And then this next shot is shot with a more closed aperture, because I was able to frame... This guy was swimming in a cave. But when he swam across the middle of the cave, I could, by having my strobes forward and crossed over at each other, I could light him and not light the deep part of the cave behind him. So I was able to get him on a nice black background, which just creates this very graphic, pleasing close-up image. So that one is shot at f7, but I shot at 5.6 to blur the background of the other one. And yeah, they're both of these two were shot at night on the same dive, I think. And this is probably also the same dive as well. And this is just a picture of a nudibranch, a Hypsilodoris tyrone, as they're now called, on a sponge. And it was just cruising over this sponge, and it was in the surge, and I timed this shot to when the surge was lifting up its skirt all the way around, and I thought it looked quite a fun picture. It almost looks to me like there's a current coming up out of these holes in the sponge, and it's blowing the skirt of the nudibranch up. So I found this quite an amusing composition. Maybe everyone else just thinks it's a dirty sponge and a nudibranch that's too small in the picture, but I like that shot. A more fancy nudibranch, Thecocera nudibranch, or also called, I've forgotten what the common name they call them, Pikachu nudibranchs. And there were lots of these on one of the sites that we like for nudibranchs in Lembeh called Virgo. It's a relatively new site down towards the town that we've been going to for the last couple of trips there, and it's one of our favourites actually. It was really good this trip because it had lots of nudies. It had a big group of these, about 10 or 15 of them, which was great because it meant that everyone could shoot them at the same time and just swap over. And then up in the shallows there were a nice pair of warty frogfish as well, as a good safety stop critter for the end of the dive. So yeah, that was nice, and I've got some more of those to process. But this one, I managed to frame it against a really colourful, I think it's not a sponge or something. I think it's like a rusty can or something I've used as the background here. I forget what it was, but I remember seeing the colour in it and realising if I contorted, I could get this guy against that bright colour and give the image a real kick. And this is from the same dive, and this is one of those warty frogfish on the safety stop, and shot here with a more open aperture of 2.8. Shot at a 400th of a second just to stop the ambient light coming through. And that's something I really like about my Sony A1 camera, is the fact that because it's got the fast sync speed just natively, you're really free to shoot these more open apertures when you want to, and without the ambient light overwhelming the picture. And then the final shot is like the anemone fish shot earlier, and the first of the common shrimp shots is shot with the special effect vortex filter. And this one here is a portrait of the same frogfish. You can clearly see it's obviously the same individual, small change in composition, and then using the filter to create the distortion and create a more interesting and unusual image. As I was saying before, I wouldn't want this in all my pictures, but every now and again it can be quite a bit of fun to have in the shot. So hopefully you enjoyed that preview of some of the early days of my trip to Lembeh. It is a bit biased by me wanting to process out certain pictures for certain things, but I do need to get on top of these pictures, and there's a lot more to come from Lembeh. It's always such a fantastically productive trip.